You've been doing everything right. Texting back at the perfect time. Not too fast, not too slow. Keeping things light when they pull away. Being understanding when they go quiet. Making yourself easy to come back to. And it's still not working. Because here's what nobody tells you. The thing that feels like it's keeping them close is actually the exact reason they keep leaving. Your availability is the problem. Not you, not your worth, not some flaw they convince you exists. Your availability. The fact that they have always known, on some deep, unspoken level, that you would be there, that the door would be open, that no matter how long the silence stretched, you would still be on the other side of it. And that certainty is the one thing quietly killing any chance of them actually choosing you. But what happens when that certainty disappears? What happens when you stop being the person who's always there, and you become the person they're suddenly not sure about? I'll tell you what happens. Something that's been sitting dormant in them, suppressed, regulated, kept at a careful distance, suddenly has nowhere left to hide. And it builds, until it has no choice but to come out. That's not a theory. That's attachment psychology. And your silence is the trigger. Most people think silence is the thing that ends it. They think going quiet means giving up. That pulling back is the same as walking away. That if you stop reaching out, stop checking in, stop being available, you lose whatever was left. But if you've ever watched someone pull away from you, only to feel that pull intensify the moment you stop chasing, you already know that's not how it works. You just didn't understand why. By the end of this video, you will. You'll understand exactly why your silence doesn't push an avoidant away. It detonates something in them. You'll understand the psychological mechanism behind it, why it works specifically on avoidance, and, most importantly, how to use your silence intentionally without losing yourself in the process. Because here's the thing. Most people, when they finally pull back, do it one of two ways. They either go cold and bitter, weaponizing the silence with the hope that the other person feels it, or they go quiet for 3 days, crack, and send a message that undoes everything. And both of those miss the point entirely. So if you've been wondering whether pulling back is the right move, whether silence actually does anything, or whether it just leaves you more alone, stay with me. This one is going to reframe everything. But before we get into how to use silence, let's clear up the biggest misconception, because it shapes everything that comes after. Most people assume that when they go silent, the avoidant feels relieved. The logic makes sense on the surface. Avoidants pull away from closeness. So if you create distance, they should be comfortable, right? They got what they wanted. Space. No pressure. No intimacy threatening their system. But that's not what happens. For an avoidant, your predictable presence is part of the equilibrium. Even when they're deactivated, even when they're distant, there's a quiet background comfort in knowing you're still there. Psychologists call this the proximity paradox. The avoidant needs distance to feel safe, but they also need to know the attachment figure hasn't disappeared. It's the emotional equivalent of needing a door you never open, but still need to know exists. But here's what that assumption gets completely wrong. The avoidant suppressed feelings don't stay suppressed when you vanish. When your presence disappears. When the texts stop, when you stop being available, when the door they've been casually leaving open suddenly closes. Their deactivated attachment system gets a jolt it wasn't prepared for. The emotional suppression lifts. And what surfaces is a relief. It's urgency. That's not manipulation. That's psychology. And your silence is the trigger. So what actually happens inside an avoidant when you go silent? This is what most videos skip over. Let's get specific, because you need to understand this at the mechanism level. Here's what the silence does to them. In stages. Stage 1, relief. In the first few days, they may genuinely feel lighter. Less pressure. This confirms your fear. So most people break here. Don't. This stage is a decoy. Stage 2, noticing. Around day 5 to 10, something subtle shifts. They go to send you something, a meme, a random thought, and they catch themselves. The habit of you is still there, but you're not, and that absence starts to register differently. Stage 3, rumination. This is where suppressed feelings begin surfacing. They start replaying moments, thinking about what you said, wondering what you're doing. The stories they told themselves about why they needed distance start feeling less convincing. Stage 4, urgency. If your silence holds, something they've been keeping regulated starts pushing through. Not just missing the habit of you, missing you, the specific texture of you. And their system, which is wired to avoid reaching out, starts losing the argument against it. This is when passion stops being suppressed. This is when it builds pressure. And if your silence holds long enough, it explodes. Now, here's something that needs to be said, because this belief keeps so many people from letting the silence do its work. When you go quiet, it's tempting to think you're playing games, and that discomfort can pull you right back into contact before the silence has done anything real. But using silence intentionally is not manipulation, it's self-preservation. The difference is this. Manipulation uses silence to punish, to make someone feel bad on purpose, to extract a reaction. What we're talking about is silence as a boundary. Choosing to stop organizing your emotional life around someone who hasn't shown up for you, and letting that choice speak for itself. Real games playing sounds like checking if they viewed your story 10 times a day, then posting content designed specifically to make them jealous, while secretly hoping they text so you can ignore them just long enough to feel powerful. That's not silence. That's noise with the volume down. The difference matters. Stay clean in your intention before you decide how to proceed. So, how do you actually use the silence without breaking it? If you've been on this journey, you know that real silence isn't just absence. It's what you build during that absence. The clarity, the self-worth that stops being contingent on their response. The version of you that stops measuring your value by whether they reach out. That's the version of you the silence needs to be protecting. So here's how you hold it. When the urge hits to check their profile, and it will, do something for yourself instead, not as a distraction, as a redirect. Every time you invest in yourself during the silence, you're compounding the very thing that made them want you in the first place. When the thought surfaces, what if they've just moved on? Let it be there without acting on it. You cannot control their internal process. You can only control whether you stay present to yours. And when not, if they reach out, do not respond immediately, not out of punishment, because you are genuinely living a life, and a message from someone who went quiet doesn't automatically move to the top of your priority list anymore. Let that be real, not performed. Your silence is only bait if it's backed by something real. The moment it becomes a strategy you're white-knuckling through, it loses everything that made it powerful. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. What if the silence just confirms to them that I don't care? That fear makes sense. But here's what it's actually costing you. When you break the silence prematurely, when you reach out before they've had time to feel your absence, you hand back the one thing that was finally creating movement in them. You reset the dynamic to the one where you're available and they're comfortable not choosing you. An avoidant whose attachment system has been activated by your silence is not going to interpret your quiet as indifference. They're going to interpret it as something shifting, something they can no longer take for granted. And if they disappear because you stopped chasing, they weren't holding on, and you've lost nothing you actually had. Let's bring this home. Your silence is not giving up. It's not coldness. It's not a game. It's what happens when you stop making yourself endlessly available to someone who hasn't yet chosen you, and you let that choice be loud enough for them to finally hear it. For an avoidant whose feelings have been suppressed by their own defense mechanisms, your silence removes the equilibrium they've been relying on. It triggers the proximity paradox. It lets what they've been keeping regulated finally build into something real. You are not waiting for them. You are becoming. And that is what detonates the passion they've been sitting on. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever gone silent on an avoidant, accidentally or on purpose, and watched something shift in them? Did they reach out? Did something change? Or did you break first and wish you hadn't? Drop it in the comments. This community understands what you're navigating in a way most people in your life probably don't. And your story might be exactly the permission someone else needs to hold their silence a little longer. If this video gave you something real, subscribe, because next week we're going deeper. We're talking about what to say when the avoidant finally reaches out after your silence, and how to respond in a way that raises the bar instead of reopening the old dynamic. That conversation is everything, and I'll break it all the way down. I'll see you there.